So we are now working on our research-based argument paper, and you are going to need to find some sources, and you're going to need to know what types of sources are out there to find the best research for your project. So to me, working with sources is a lot like putting together the pieces of a puzzle. It starts out that there's a lot of information out there, right? This is not a 10-piece puzzle for a toddler. There's a 1,000 pieces to our puzzle out there. And so it's difficult because you've got to find the right ones and you've got to arrange them in the right way. And eventually, when you start working with those sources, it'll start taking shape. You'll find the pieces that fit and where they need to go. But it is a process, and so you have to give yourself time for research in the process. It's not exactly like writing something maybe like you did in English 1010, such as some sort of maybe a cover letter, right, where you're writing about yourself. In this case, you've got to go out there and dig and find those important pieces of information and then figure out how they all work together. So one thing I wanted to mention, because a lot of you have different majors and minors, is that the idea of research can mean many different things in different fields. So I want to take time to recognize that. For some of you, that may mean looking under a microscope. For some of you, that might mean conducting certain types of psychological experiments. It may mean reading history books. It all means different things in different fields, and that's okay. So what you're going to do for this project, obviously, is not going to be that kind of research where you're looking under a microscope, but even in all those different fields, especially when you're writing academic papers, you're going to have to conduct things like literature reviews. So it's important to understand and know how to work with sources, no matter what field that you're going into. It's also important to remember that different sources fulfill different needs and purposes, so you really have to think about why you're writing and what's going to work for you. Sources also have to be vetted through lateral reading, regardless of source type. So we are going to discuss in a later video how to do lateral reading, and I'm going to walk you through that process. So once you locate a source that looks promising, you've got to take time to really sort through it to make sure it fits the bill. And it's important to know too, regardless of your discipline, all research is working to build knowledge. So this course will hopefully give you that foundation to kind of build upon no matter which direction you take. So let's talk about some of the types of sources that you might encounter for this project, maybe some that you already are familiar with, such as books, maybe even some sources you haven't thought about. Now, you may use some of these, you may use all of these, you may use something that I haven't listed here, but the important part is to start considering what kind of sources you could work with. So books can be, that's probably one of the first things that came to mind, but books can be kind of challenging in a class like this because you don't really have a lot of time to read just massive quantities of books. Maybe you have already read a book on your subject matter. Maybe that's why you're already passionate about it or interested in it and you could use that previous knowledge, but don't count books out either. Remember, there are a lot of different books that contain chapters that can sort of stand alone, or they're a book of essays, and maybe not the whole book applies to your project. Maybe there's a chapter or an essay in a book that would work really well with whatever it is that you're writing about. You've also probably heard of journal articles. Peer-reviewed journal articles or discipline articles, they can be really excellent use for you guys in your writing. The challenging part, I would say, is that some of these journal articles can be a little challenging to read because they are written for professionals in the field, and you're not quite there yet, right? You may be a student of that particular field, so you're growing and learning and developing these skills to read these kind of journal articles, but don't count them out. You may encounter some difficult terminology or maybe some difficulty in reading the results in some sort of journal article, but don't quite count it out. You are learning and growing, and these could be really excellent sources for you. News articles and periodicals and documentaries could be really helpful to you. You may not have even thought about documentaries. If you consider all of these, such as news articles or a documentary, make sure you're taking a look at who's writing it and what their purpose is and where it's published so that you can get a clearer perspective on if you should use this source or not, or how might readers think about your source if you use this particular source. Lectures, infographics. A lot of students really like to rely on statistical evidence for their writing. I would say that's fine, but you can't limit yourself to just statistics. That's not enough, because we always know you can take those stats and use them and manipulate how you present them so that they fall into your favor. So you definitely have to have some literature behind your research as well. Blogs, don't count those out. Be careful. Is it from Joe down the street, or is it from a scholar in the field? But there are a lot of really interesting things out there on the web, so we can't quite just limit it or knock it out just because it is, something like a blog. So that's kind of interesting. Laws, government websites, or data. Some websites and some web pages are going to be okay. Oftentimes, depending on the website, sometimes their information can be fairly surface level or limited. So we really have to be careful about using those. Podcasts would be great, TV shows, depending on what it is that you're writing about. So the main thing is, know there's a lot of different source types out there. You just have to kind of figure out what works best for your project and how to integrate these into your writing. So let's talk finding sources. I want to make sure you are familiar with using the Walker Library. So let's pull that up. Okay, so this is the library's main page, and this is where you can start your Joule search. Once you kind of move more into your major, you may want to start learning some different databases that apply best to your major or your minor. And again, once you kind of get into your field, there will be specific journals you become more familiar with. So I wanted to kind of show you how this sort of works. Let's say that I'm researching cyberbullying. So I'm going to do just a quick search. And I want to remind you too, if you're not logged in, you may want to do that to see more results. So when I do this, I type in cyberbullying and I get 41,000 results. That is a whole lot. So it's good. There's a lot out there on my topic. But it's bad in that I have almost too much to work with. So one thing I really like about this is as I start typing this in, I start getting the library actually helps me a little bit here. I'm starting to get some more specific information. So maybe I say cyberbullying and social media and teens. So it almost helps me start limiting my search a little bit. You also need to think about terms like not. So you can add in different kinds of phrasing. Or is another one. So let's say you were typing in university or college or higher education, something like that. That can kind of help make sure you're getting in all of those words that you need. So let's do cyberbullying, social media, and teens, and see if that helps us a little bit. All right, when I do that, see how that has limited my search down even more. So 1,179 sources. There are several different things too that I can do. Let's say I really want to be careful about my publication dates. So I'm going to update the dates. I want to make sure they're pretty recent since cyberbullying has changed a lot over the last few years. That has limited my sources a little bit more, I believe, not a whole lot. And then I can also go over here and see what kind of sources I can look at. So if I'm looking for an academic journal, I can already see that is also going to limit my sources as well. So over here, you can kind of see a lot of different kinds of journal articles. Let's just click on one just so you can kind of see. Often they are linked to full text. Again, often they can give you a citation that you need to double check. And what I really love too is if you find an article that works really well for you, they give you some keyword suggestions. So you can see cyberbullying came up here, but maybe I really want to go into like what kind of things can prevent cyberbullying. And I'm really interested in how parenting affects cyberbullying. That might give me some more keywords to work with. So whenever you're coming up with keywords for your proposal, that's what we're talking about here, is what are some of the things that I can type into my search and get some specific information back. All right, so screen smart parenting, how to find balance. So do you see how I'm starting to get the things I need based on the keywords that I'm using? So please remember that you can use your phrasing here. They can help you with how you are limiting it to what kind of publications you're getting, your dates, your source type. All of those kinds of things can really help you find the resources that you need. Don't forget too that when you are on the home page, you can use the research guide for English 1020 based on, let's just go here really quickly. Of course, English and 1020. And there are sections on choosing a topic. You can use things like opposing viewpoints. It'll also link you to things like journal articles, things like that. You're going to want a variety of sources, and you really want to make sure that what you're getting to is very, 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 very specific. So again, the concept of cyberbullying is way too broad. I would want to already limit my whole paper perhaps to something like how parenting style affects cyberbullying. And then I'm going to have to do a lot of in-depth development about that, not just surface level. See, that's the thing about Google. So I can go to Google and I can type in cyberbullying, and it's going to spit back at me what's kind of in a lot of ways easy and popular. And I'm going to get some stuff like, what is cyberbullying? And this is it's not bad, but you can see how it's kind of surface level. What are the effects of cyberbullying, right? It just says mental. So I could see a student saying there are a lot of effects for cyberbullying. It can cause mental, emotional, and physical problem. Okay, that's very much an overview. And those are wonderful things to know, but you're going to want more depth than that in your paper. You can see it's bringing up some basic things like Wikipedia. All right, so another idea that you may want to take into consideration, and I may get into this on the lateral reading page, is when you are reading things and you're catching those keywords, you may also want to check out things like when you access the articles. Let's see if I can access this one really quickly. You may want to go down to their resources and start seeing what resources they use, what they cite. That's not really a traditional works cited page. Let's go back to, let's limit this to a journal article really quickly. And we've got a linked full text. Sometimes you may have to play around with the link full text. Sometimes they come up immediately. Sometimes it takes a minute to do that. Don't be intimidated by these. All journal articles typically follow the MRAD pattern. I'm not sure if this one does. I just clicked on it really quickly, which was intro, which usually has a lit review, methods, results, and discussion. That's what MRAD means. So that can also kind of, in knowing that, can help you know which sections to really dig into. But if you go to the references on your journal articles or anything that you're working with, oftentimes you'll start seeing some connections. So maybe if there's a main researcher out there in the field, you may start seeing their name pop up many different times. So there's all kinds of little clues that you can use as you're working with your sources. All right, it'll take a lot of digging in. So remember to build in some time as you're working through your sources, because you'll need it. You've got to do a lot of reading and a lot of connection. So get out there, start digging, and start reading.